The smell of pasta filled my kitchen. Then his message lit up my phone. I know I don't deserve another chance. My chest tightened. Not because I missed him, but because I almost believed him. He said all the right things. Therapy, regret, growth. And for a second I thought maybe this time. But some men don't change. They just rehearse. I wish I'd known the difference sooner. Felt familiar? Stay till the end. If this reminded you of someone, share it. And don't forget to like and subscribe. 6 months had passed since Rachel left David. 6 months of mornings where she didn't reach for her phone first thing. 6 months of rebuilding a life that felt small but manageable. She'd created rituals. Coffee at the same cafe on Saturday mornings. Therapy on Wednesday afternoons. Sunday evening walks through the park near her apartment. These small structures held her together, but there was still a gap. A space where something used to be. Not pain anymore, but a kind of emptiness. The awareness of loss without the sting. She'd accepted that some relationships leave permanent indentations, even after you've moved on. Her best friend Sarah had told her she looked lighter, freer. And Rachel supposed it was true, but freedom and wholeness weren't the same thing. She still felt the ghost of what they'd had. Not in a way that made her want him back, but in a way that made her wonder if everything had been wasted. If there was any redemption possible. If somewhere, he'd actually learned something from what happened between them. That wondering was dangerous, but she let herself do it anyway. The message came on a Thursday evening. Rachel was making dinner when her phone buzzed. The first line of the text preview made her stomach clench. Rachel, I know I have no right to contact you, but I need you to know what you've meant to me. She stared at it for a full minute before opening the full message. What followed was nearly 4 paragraphs. Long, articulate sentences about therapy, about how her leaving had been the wake-up call he needed, about how he'd spent months understanding what he'd done, how he'd treated her, why she was right to leave. The words were careful, not defensive, not demanding, just honest sounding. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did, and I'm trying to be better. For myself, not for you. I have no right to ask anything from you. Rachel read it twice, then a third time. Part of her wanted to delete it immediately. Part of her, the part that still believed in growth, in change, in people's capacity to transform, hesitated. She didn't respond that night, but she didn't delete it either. Over the next few days, she thought about it, replayed conversations with Sarah in her head. People can change, Sarah had said. Maybe he actually did some work. Rachel had been skeptical then, but now, reading those words again, she found herself wondering if maybe, just maybe, it was possible. When David asked to see her, just coffee, no pressure, just to talk, she said yes. They met at a cafe downtown, far from the places they used to frequent together. When Rachel saw him, she braced herself for the familiar flutter of attraction. Instead, she felt something closer to curiosity. He looked different. Thinner, maybe. Or just different in the way people look when they've been through something. He stood when she arrived and waited for her to sit before he did. Small gesture, but she noticed it. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I," Rachel admitted. They ordered coffee. For the first few minutes, they made small talk. "How's work? Did you end up getting that promotion? How's Sarah?" It was careful, surface level, like two people approaching dangerous water. Then he said, "I've been seeing someone, a therapist, for about 4 months now." Rachel nodded, unsure where this was going. "And one of the things she asked me was whether I understood what I'd done to you. Not just the big things, but the way I made you feel. Every day." He paused, stirring his coffee, I didn't have a good answer at first. He looked up at her. His eyes were different too. Less certain, more tired. But I started thinking about the small moments, like how you used to light up when you talked about your work, and how I'd find a way to make it about me, how I'd always need your reassurance, your attention, your energy, and you just gave it. Every time. Rachel felt something in her chest tighten. I realized I wasn't loving you, he continued. I was using you, using your goodness to feel better about myself. She didn't know what to say. I don't expect this to change anything, he said quickly. I'm not telling you this to get you back. I'm telling you because you deserve to know that I see it, that none of what happened was your fault. And the thing was, he sounded like he meant it. Over the next few weeks, they saw each other again. Short coffees, a walk through the park one afternoon. He would bring up specific memories, the night they stayed up talking about her childhood, the way she'd held his hand through his sister's wedding, the small jokes that only made sense between them. He remembered. He said he remembered. And when he held her hand one afternoon, walking along the path where they'd first met, he looked at her like she was something precious he'd already lost once and couldn't quite believe was there again. Rachel felt the familiar ache of hope. But then she started noticing small things. The way he said, "You make me want to be better," with the exact same intonation as he had years ago, in the early months of their relationship. The precision of his emotional language, phrases that felt rehearsed, not spontaneous. One evening, he suggested they have dinner without phones. A beautiful memory from their relationship, he reminded her. A night where it was just them, no distractions. Rachel agreed. But as he talked about how this was what he'd been missing, how it was clear to him now what really mattered, she found herself watching him rather than listening, observing the way he performed sincerity, the slight pause before each vulnerable admission, as if he was recalling lines. When he said, "I've never been more sure about anything," she recognized the phrasing. She'd heard it before, not just once, but multiple times in different contexts. She didn't mention it. Instead, she smiled and reached across the table to squeeze his hand. And she waited. There was something she was waiting for, something that would confirm what part of her already suspected. A few days later, she found it. The moment Rachel started to bring up the past, David shifted. Not dramatically, subtly. A tightness around his eyes, a certain resignation in his voice. "I know you're hurt," he'd say when she mentioned something he'd done. "And I hate that. I hate that I hurt you. But I can't keep punishing myself for things I've already apologized for." It was a masterclass in deflection. Every time she tried to process what had happened, he reframed it. Not as her needing to understand, but as her holding him accountable, and somehow, in his telling, being unfair for doing so. "I don't want to lose you again," he'd say, his voice soft and wounded. "Can we just move forward?" And Rachel would feel the weight of his fragility. The sense that her need to address the past was a threat to his healing. When she suggested establishing some boundaries, he responded with, "I thought you said I'd changed. If you still don't trust me, then maybe this is pointless." The words were gentle, but the implication was clear. Trust him now, or accept that she was the problem. She backed down. Rachel hadn't told Sarah much about seeing David again. It was David who suggested, carefully, lovingly, that maybe people who weren't involved shouldn't weigh in on their relationship. "Sarah cares about you," he said, "but she doesn't know me like you do. And maybe she's a little protective in a way that isn't helpful right now." Rachel wanted to argue, but he was right in a way. Sarah had been skeptical, and David was different now. Sarah just didn't understand, so she stopped mentioning him. When Sarah asked how things were going, Rachel gave vague answers. When Sarah suggested they go out, Rachel made excuses. She found herself protecting this secret space between her and David, treating it like something sacred that outside interference might contaminate. It was him and her against the world, the way it used to feel in the beginning. The way she now understood was the beginning of the end. One evening, Rachel noticed he'd been unusually distant all day. She asked what was wrong. "Nothing," he said. "Why does something have to be wrong? You just seem withdrawn." "Do I?" He looked genuinely puzzled. "Or are you projecting your own anxiety onto me?" Rachel felt her certainty waver. Was she doing that? Had she been too sensitive? "I'm not trying to be mean," he said, reaching for her hand. "I'm just noticing that you always interpret my emotions through the lens of your own hurt. And it makes it hard for me to just be." She apologized. Another time, he mentioned that he'd tried reaching out to a mutual friend, and the friend had been cold to him. Rachel, knowing the friend in question, doubted this was accurate. When she gently pointed this out, David looked hurt. "So you don't believe me now?" he asked. "You think I'm lying?" "I didn't say that. But that's what you meant. You always assume the worst of me." She hadn't assumed anything. She'd simply questioned. But the way he reframed it made her feel cruel for not immediately validating his version of events. She learned to stop questioning. About a month into their renewed connection, David started to seem stressed. He mentioned that work was difficult, that he was struggling with some things, that therapy was bringing up a lot of old pain. Rachel listened and held space for him. But increasingly, she found herself managing his emotions, preparing nice dinners to cheer him up, texting him encouraging messages, adjusting her own schedule to be available when he needed to talk. He was trying so hard, he kept saying, trying to be better. It was just exhausting sometimes. And Rachel understood. She wanted to help him succeed, wanted to be the person who finally got through to him, who loved him in a way that actually worked. So she gave more, and he took it, gently, gratefully, in a way that somehow made it feel like an offering rather than a drain. One night, he said, "I don't know what I'd do without you." And Rachel realized that she'd slipped back into exactly the same dynamic. Except now, she could see it happening and felt powerless to stop it. It happened by accident. Rachel's phone was charging on the nightstand, and David was scrolling through his messages while they lay in bed watching a show. He'd set it on the mattress between them, face up, the screen glowing softly in the dark room. A notification came through. A new message from someone named Emma. Rachel didn't mean to look, but the preview text was visible, and her eyes caught on a phrase. "I know I don't deserve another chance, but you changed me." She froze. David shifted, reaching for his phone, but Rachel was already moving. She sat up, her heart suddenly loud in her chest. "Who's Emma?" He looked at the screen, and for just a fraction of a second, less than a second really, something flickered across his face. Recognition of being caught. Then it smoothed away. "A friend from therapy group," he said easily. "She's going through something similar, so we check in." Rachel didn't believe him. But she also didn't confront him either. Something in her already knew what she would find. Some part of her had been waiting for this moment, even though she hadn't consciously known it. Later, when David was asleep, she went through his phone. The messages were there. Not just to Emma. To at least 3 other women, maybe more. And the language was identical. Word for word in some cases. The same declarations about change. The same carefully constructed vulnerability. The same promises of transformation. One message to someone named Jessica was dated just a week before he'd reconnected with Rachel. "I've been in therapy now, and it's really opened my eyes to how I've hurt people. You were right to leave me. I'm just grateful I got the chance to understand what I did wrong. I'm trying to be better, For myself. Rachel read it with a cold, clinical detachment. This wasn't the message of someone who had changed. This was the message of someone who had perfected his performance. She closed the phone and set it back where she'd found it. The next morning, Rachel observed him like she was watching someone through one-way glass. David made coffee, kissed her forehead, asked how she'd slept. Every gesture was identical to the ones that had come before, but now she saw through them. She saw the muscle memory of affection, the choreography of care. He was so good at it. That was the thing that struck her most. He wasn't crude or careless in his manipulation. He was an artist. Every line delivered with the precision of someone who'd practiced it 100 times. Because he had. She thought about all the women. How many of them believed he'd changed, just like she had? How many were at this exact moment in their own homes, feeling special and chosen? When David left for work, Rachel didn't feel angry. Anger would have been cleaner. Instead, she felt a kind of hollow clarity. The way you might feel looking at a photograph of someone you used to love and realizing you do not recognize them anymore. She sat on the couch and made a mental inventory of her options. She could confront him, throw the phone in his face, make him explain, make him squirm. But what would that change? He'd apologize. He'd have an explanation ready. He'd twist the narrative until her anger looked like misunderstanding. She could tell the other women, but that would only make her look unstable, jealous, bitter. She could leave, quietly, finally. That afternoon, Rachel called a locksmith. She didn't tell David she was doing this. She simply scheduled an appointment for Saturday morning when he had plans with a client. She had the locks changed and had 3 new keys made. One for her bag, one for her desk at work, one to give to Sarah. She didn't feel dramatic while doing it. She felt practical, methodical, like someone performing necessary maintenance on her own life. Next, she gathered the documents: birth certificate, medical records, tax returns, financial statements. She put them in a file folder and moved it to a locked drawer in her office at work. She opened a new email account, forwarded important messages to it, changed passwords on everything: banking, email, social media. She was dismantling the shared life with the efficiency of someone who no longer had anything to prove. On Friday night, David asked what she wanted to do over the weekend. "I think I need some space," she said calmly. "I've been thinking a lot lately, and I realize we're not right for each other. I think it's best if we stop seeing each other." He looked shocked. "Rachel, where is this coming from?" "From me," she said simply. "I'm ending this. But I thought we were doing so well." "No," she interrupted, her voice steady. "We weren't. I was doing what I've always done, ignoring my own instincts to protect your feelings." "Rachel, please, can we talk about this? There's something I need to tell you." She stood. "No, we're not talking. We're done." And then, before he could respond, before he could deploy whatever emotional weapon he had ready, she said, "My locks are being changed tomorrow morning. I'm going to need you to collect your things while I'm at work on Monday. Sarah will be here to make sure you leave everything that's mine." His face went pale. You're serious?" "Completely," Rachel said. And she was. Monday morning, Rachel sat at a coffee shop 3 blocks away. She had her laptop open, but she wasn't working. She was waiting for the text from Sarah that would tell her David had left, that he'd taken his things and gone. The message came at 10:47 a.m. "He's gone. Left about 10 minutes ago. Looked like a deer in headlights." Rachel didn't smile, didn't feel triumphant. She just felt tired and clear. She closed her laptop, packed up her things, and walked home. The apartment looked smaller without him in it. She went through each room, erasing the small traces he'd left behind. A coffee mug in the cabinet, a book on the nightstand, a jacket in the closet. By evening, there was almost no evidence he'd ever been there. She ordered food from a restaurant she loved, poured herself a glass of wine, put on music he'd hated, loud, chaotic indie rock that made the walls vibrate. Her phone buzzed. David's number. She blocked it without reading the message. It buzzed again 5 minutes later. A different number. Probably him again, using a new account or someone else's phone. She silenced the phone entirely and set it face down on the table. Tomorrow she'd be methodical about everything else. The lawyer, the final conversations, the clean break. But tonight, she just sat in the quiet of her own apartment and let the weight of it settle over her. Not the weight of sadness, but the weight of decision, of having finally chosen herself. And it felt like the lightest thing she'd ever held. Tuesday morning, Rachel stood in front of her apartment door with the locksmith. He was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and efficient hands. He didn't ask questions. He just removed the old deadbolt, replaced it with a new one, and tested the key twice. "That should do it," he said. "Your keys work?" Rachel tried the new key. It turned smoothly. The lock clicked. She tried it again from the outside, then the inside. "Perfect," she said. After he left, she stood in the doorway for a moment. The simple act of changing the locks felt symbolic in a way that nothing else had. Not the emails or the passwords or even the explicit conversation ending things. This was the physical manifestation of boundary. This space was hers. No one else could access it now without her permission. She pulled out her phone and opened her blocked contacts. David's number sat there with a small, blocked label next to it. She clicked on it, and instead of just blocking, she deleted it entirely, watched his contact disappear from her phone. Then she went through her message threads and deleted every conversation they'd had. Photos, voice notes, memes he'd sent her. All of it, gone. She didn't do it in anger or triumph. She did it the way you might delete files from a computer, methodically, carefully, to make space for something new. That evening, Rachel stood in front of the bathroom mirror. She'd expected to feel relief, maybe sadness, maybe anger. What she felt instead was a kind of strange neutrality, like she'd finally reached a state of emotional rest after months of turbulence. She looked at her own face, really looked at it. The woman looking back at her wasn't light or free or newly reborn. She was just present, solid, real. She didn't need anything from David anymore. Not an explanation, not an apology, not even the satisfaction of being right or proven correct. She needed nothing from him because she already had the only thing that mattered: clarity about who he was and what they were. She moved through her apartment, turning off lights, locking windows, preparing for bed. The rituals of securing her own space. She didn't reach for her phone. She didn't wonder what he was doing, or if he was okay, or if he understood what he'd lost. Those thoughts felt like a luxury she could no longer afford. Instead, she got into bed, pulled the covers up to her chin, and let herself sleep. For the first time in weeks, she didn't wait for anyone to text, didn't hold space for someone else's emotions, didn't compromise on what she needed. She just existed, solidly, in her own life. The next morning, Rachel did something she hadn't done in the entire time she'd known David. She wrote down everything she needed to say to him. Every hurt, every betrayal, every moment she'd questioned her own sanity. She filled 7 pages with her own handwriting, sentences that ranged from articulate to barely coherent. And then, standing in her kitchen, she tore the pages into small pieces and watched them fall into the trash. She didn't keep them, didn't frame them, didn't send them. The writing wasn't for him, it was for her. A way of externalizing what she'd been holding internally. A way of acknowledging every emotion without giving it permanence. Later that day, she opened a new Spotify playlist, the first one she'd created in months. She titled it simply, Mine. It was deliberately chaotic. Punk rock next to classical music, R&B next to indie folk, songs he would have hated sitting alongside songs she'd loved for years, but hidden because of his judgment. She played it while she cleaned her apartment, while she did laundry, while she sat at her desk and worked. The music felt like reclamation, like remembering that her taste had value even if no one else shared it, that her preferences were valid even if they weren't anyone else's. Small things. But they added up to something. The reconstruction of a self that had been quietly dismantled over time. A week after changing the locks, Rachel sat in Dr. Patterson's office, a new therapist, not the one David's influence had kept her from finding sooner. "How are you doing?" Dr. Patterson asked, her voice gentle but direct. Rachel considered the question seriously. "Tired," she finally said, "but less tired than I've been in a long time." "Can you explain that?" "It's like, before I was tired from managing his emotions, from holding space for his transformation, from wondering if I was being fair or if I was punishing him." Rachel paused, choosing her words carefully. "Now I'm just tired from being honest with myself. And that's a different kind of tired. It's necessary." Dr. Patterson nodded and made a note. Over the following weeks, Rachel established new routines. Morning runs before work, lunch with Sarah on Thursdays, weekly therapy sessions that focused not on what she'd done wrong, but on why she'd believed she deserved so little. She didn't announce these changes. She didn't post about her healing or share motivational quotes. She simply lived, quietly, steadily, without needing an audience to validate her recovery. One afternoon, she was reading at her favorite cafe when she noticed a woman at the next table. The woman was on the phone, and through fragmented conversation, Rachel gathered that the caller, presumably her boyfriend, was upset that she wanted to spend time with her friends instead of seeing him. Rachel watched as the woman's shoulders tensed, as she started making excuses, as she shifted, preparing to change her plans. Rachel recognized that posture. She'd worn it for years, but she didn't intervene. Instead, she simply looked back at her book, aware that this woman had to find her own way out, just as Rachel had. 2 months after the breakup, Rachel ran into David's best friend, Marcus, at a grocery store. He looked uncomfortable when he saw her. "Rachel, hey, how are you?" "I'm good," she said simply. "How are you?" I heard about you and David. I'm sorry things didn't work out." Rachel almost laughed. "Are you?" He shifted his weight, glancing away. "Well, yeah, he was really into you. He said you two were working things out." "He said a lot of things," Rachel replied, her voice level. "To a lot of people." Understanding flickered across Marcus's face. He'd probably just realized that she knew, that she wasn't the confused ex-girlfriend he'd expected to encounter. "Oh," he said quietly. "Yeah," Rachel confirmed. "Oh." She didn't elaborate, didn't shame him or demand loyalty. She simply continued her shopping, leaving him standing there with the realization that David's carefully constructed narrative had finally collapsed. 3 months after leaving, Rachel did something small but significant. She had a box, the kind that had accumulated in her closet. Inside were items from her relationship with David, a ticket stub from a concert, a sweater he'd given her, photos, letters. She didn't look through it extensively. She didn't dwell. She simply opened the box, examined each item with clinical detachment, and decided what to do with it. The sweater went to charity. The ticket stub, torn up. The letters, deleted from her computer and burned in a safe burn bin she kept on her apartment's small balcony. The photos she kept, but not for the reasons she might have in the past. She kept them as evidence, as proof that she'd existed in a version of reality where she believed in him. They were data points, not treasures. When the box was empty, She broke it down and recycled it. It wasn't a ritual. It wasn't therapeutic in the way movies suggest. It was simply practical. She was removing the physical manifestations of a story that no longer belonged to her. That night, she slept better than she had in years. 4 months after the breakup, Rachel was scrolling through her phone when she came across a screenshot she'd saved. One of David's messages to another woman. For a moment, she considered deleting it, but instead, she read it again. "I know I don't deserve another chance, but you changed me. I see my patterns now. I want to be better." She thought about the Rachel from 6 months ago, the one who had wanted so desperately to believe that love could transform someone, that faith and patience and unconditional support could finally make someone choose to be good. That Rachel had been kind, but she'd been naive in a way that had cost her. She deleted the screenshot. Then she opened her notes app and wrote something. Not for David, not for anyone else, just for herself. "I learned that sometimes the answer you're waiting for from someone is the silence you learn to give yourself, not as punishment, not as withdrawal, but as clarity, as the recognition that I don't need anyone else's permission to be whole." She read it once, then closed the app. Sarah called that evening, inviting her out for drinks with a few other friends. Rachel said yes immediately. She wasn't waiting for anyone anymore, wasn't holding space for someone else's transformation or redemption. She was simply living, choosing what she wanted, pursuing what interested her, surrounding herself with people who showed up for her without expecting something in return. It wasn't perfect. Some days, she still caught herself wondering what David would think about something, or imagining his reaction. Trauma leaves fingerprints, even after you've washed your hands clean. But mostly, she was present in her own life, and that, she'd learned, was enough. How many times have you heard the same promise in different mouths? How many times have you believed this time is different, because the person delivering the words had practiced them so well? How many times have you watched someone perform transformation so convincingly that you forgot to ask if they were actually changing, or just getting better at performing? If this story reminded you of something you preferred to forget, maybe it's time to remember. With courage. Maybe it's time to recognize that pattern. The way the apologies sound rehearsed. The way the vulnerability feels performed. The way love sounds like a script he's perfecting on multiple stages simultaneously. Maybe it's time to stop waiting for someone to become the person they promised to be when you left. Because here's what Rachel learned. The people who change don't announce it. They don't send carefully crafted messages explaining their transformation. They don't come back with the perfect words after you've left. They change quietly in private, without expecting you to witness or validate it. The ones who come back? The ones who text you long apologies? The ones who show up at your door with the exact words you've been waiting to hear? They're perfecting their craft, not their character. Don't confuse the two. You don't owe anyone the belief in their redemption, not even someone you once loved. Not even if they say all the right words. You owe yourself the clarity to recognize when you're listening to a performance instead of a person. And you owe yourself the strength to leave before the second act. If you're still waiting for those words, the ones that will finally prove you weren't wrong to love them, know this: you weren't wrong. You were just loving someone who was more in love with who they could convince you they were than with who you actually needed them to be. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop listening. Sometimes healing starts the moment you close the door and don't look back. And when the next message lights up your phone, you won't need to read it. If this story reminded you of someone, or maybe of yourself, share it. Someone might need to hear it. And if it spoke to you, like the video and subscribe. You never know whose story could be next.